Hello, and welcome back to episode 3 of FlyOverThinkers. We really appreciate everyone listening. As always, with me is Josh Coram and
Hi.
Eric Johnson. So,
Hello.
guys, it's good to be back with you and have this time together once again.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for taking the intro, John. I appreciate that. Yeah. So today, what are we doing? We've been gone for a little bit, but we're back. Like you said, episode 3, jumping in. Today, I think it's good if we talk about relationship stuff. Like we're all middle-aged men. I hate to use that word, but I feel like
What, middle aged or men? I'm glad to be a man. It sucks to be a middle age. I'd rather identify as a 20-year-old man.
Yeah. I mean, no, that's a bad joke. It's too easy. I'm teeing that up. Anyway, yeah, we're middle aged, right? Is 40 middle aged these days? I don't.
Yeah, I
If-
think so.
If we were living in the 8th century, we would be elderly. But yes, right now we're considered middle aged.
I feel like I'm. Can you imagine that? Like living back then and being. I am 40 years old. I am an old man. I am. Yeah. I don't feel old. I mean, when I get out of bed in the morning, it's not the greatest. That's whenever I feel my worst.
Yeah.
Which sucks because you're like laying there in this comfy bed and but laying there too long. I don't know if you guys experience this. If I lay there too long, I like my back just says fuck you and just hurts all the time.
I've got a purple mattress, so I know all about a comfy bed.
Oh, you got one of those?
I do. I've had it for about six or 7 years.
Really? And is it good? Like
I love it.
compared really?
Yeah.
Is it firm or is it squishy?
It is. When we bought it, they didn't really have different firmness levels. There was kind of just a one deal. I think I'd probably go with something a little less firm next time, but I do really like it.
Because they're not that expensive, right? They're on the cost benefit side, right?
I think it was about $1,000, but like I said, that was 6 or 7 years ago.
Is that a king size bed or queen?
Queen.
That's still not bad.
But Josh, I'm with you because sometimes if I lay in bed too long and I try to get up, I feel like the Tin Man from The Wizard of Oz. I mean, it just happens. I mean, it's just one of those things that it's just one of the ways our body begins to change as we get to this older spot in life. Like I always like it. That's an interesting term. George Carlin used to say that we always bullshit ourselves about our age because we have a fear of getting older. He said, I started to notice it in my 40s. He goes, I look in the mirror and go, well, I'm getting older. Yeah, that sounds better than old. Sounds like I might even last a little longer. He's like, bullshit, I'm getting old.
I bought a bed actually a couple weeks ago, and it probably had a week in it now. Yeah, about a week in it, and I bought one of the adjustable frames because I do strongman. So all these strongman dudes are telling me, get adjustable frame, you'll stop snoring, or it'll help you with snoring. It doesn't. I still snore like a banshee. I'm just sitting up when I do it. But I find that because I'm so big, for those who have never seen my body, I'm about 6'3" and about 315 pounds. Like even though I've got the back adjusted and my legs up and everything's nice, my ass falls asleep because it's all this pressure of my body all like focused on my butt. And so then I got to lay it back out and then slowly like do this dance of like finding the right position and then sleep for a little while and then adjust it again because it has a remote control that's like wireless remote control, which I've gotten it confused with the TV remote. And I'm like, why isn't it turning on? And I'm like, oh, I'm going up now. Okay. Yeah. So and I love it, but it's taken some getting used to. So I'm still stiff. I'm still achy because again, like laying in it too long or something like that. But I recommend them though. The adjustable beds. If you're a bigger fella, it's pretty nice.
But you talk about one of the nice things about having some perspective and wisdom that comes with age and getting older, especially maybe it might tie in like we're talking about with relationships today, is that I was thinking here recently, that, your perspectives and your preferences really do change. And I think change in not a bad way, in a good way. Sadly, the guy from Digital Underground died a while back, but I was hearing that song, the Humpty Dance.
Humpty Dance. Yeah.
And there's a line in there where he goes, I once got busy in a Burger King bathroom. And when you're like in high school, you hear that and you're like, yeah. And as an adult, you hear it and you're like, fuck no.
Ew.
Are you kidding me? I'm like, I don't even want to step on the floor of that bathroom, let alone try to maintain an erection. I mean, gee. So it's one of those deals where life teaches you that no, some situations are just not that appealing.
True. So diving into this, we're going to talk about relationships, but really what prompted this in my thought process is I'm an old man on TikTok, which is weird. It always reminds me of that meme with Steve Buscemi, and he's like, how do you do? Where he's like in high school and anyway, fellow kids, like that's what it feels like. I feel like a big poser because I'm old and on TikTok. But one of the things I see references to YouTube on TikTok as well. And I go and I see these groups of men or life coaches or relationship advice people, and they're always talking about this notion of the high value male. This in dating, like, I'm a high value male, so I'm going to seek out high value women. And it just always rubbed me the wrong way, this notion of a high value male.
And Josh, let me ask you in all sincerity, because this is a newer term to me. I'm not familiar with it. I know you don't have the exact thing, but as you're listening to descriptions and on the TikTok, so what are they describing as a high value male?
It's what I call it the MBA-style thinking in dating. And you see, it's almost as if they have an equation in their head. And they've got, all right, I've got a job. It's a good paying job. I've got a nice house. I've got a nice car. I've got a bank account. I can pay bills. I demand a woman that, is fit and pretty and all this stuff and is going to listen to me. There's a lot of like equation style thinking. And then I call this the MBA style thinking because it's like, all right, well, I have my business set up. Let's go. And it's almost like they treat relationships like it's a business. And to me, it actually echoes what I see coming from the incel community too, because in their mind, it's an equation. I have all these things. I'm a good looking guy, all this stuff. I'm fit. I have a job, blah, blah, blah. Why am I not getting laid? And it's like this, they're missing or not understanding the X factor, the human factor of like, you are a creep. That's what you're missing. Yes, you've got all these things, but you're a fucking creep, or your personality sucks, or there's something missing. So like that's the incel side. I'm sure we're going to fricassee for that. I don't care.
Well, and Josh, if I could real quick, so maybe just in case people are listening, so incel means involuntary celibate. So people who would like to be sexually or romantically involved with people, but who apparently cannot find people to reciprocate that.
Right. But you see the same ideology, the same thinking coming from these people arguing that they're high value men or the high value male. And so I wanted to dive into that. Like, what do you guys think about that? What's this idea of that these guys should seek out, be entitled to these women, or like high value women, if you will? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, like John mentioned earlier about priorities and perspectives, I mean, those things change over time and they definitely vary. When you get into a relationship, kind of what brings people together is a common goal. So if you've got your life together in such a way that, obviously you're looking for your partner to have their life together so that you can be traveling companions to go in the same direction.
I think this is like a young man's thing.
I would guess so. Yeah. I mean, most of the time the dating game is for the young people. When you get older, you find what you're looking for. Or...
Although I'll get myself in some trouble here. I'm going to share a view. It doesn't make it right, but also doesn't make it wrong, because I think that's a good question, Josh. Is this a young person's game, especially a young man's game? I would dare say, and so people could always throw shade in my direction. They say, well, that's because you're older and you're fat and you don't have a high status. They could say I'm throwing it that way, but I actually think I agree with Eric, is that I think that this is not just a young man's game, but it's a young man's game that tends to be self-centered or narcissistic. Because what happens is when you start having this checklist, or like you said, the equation, which I think is a great way to put this, you're not looking for the other. I mean, you're not looking for somebody that is a true being. You're looking for a checklist, which is because I need to have A, B, and C, and the person I find needs to complement X, Y, and Z, or they need to fulfill these expectations. And that really robs somebody of their humanity. It's really like taking away their individuality. Now, again, like Eric said, I mean, on the other side, we do need to find people that have like shared vision and shared goals. I mean, so it's, some of that needs to be in there, but, a relationship shouldn't require articles of incorporation and a lawyer. My wife and I are not the Paulsons LLC. I mean, that's just not what we're trying to do. In fact, and I'll be quiet, is that I was listening once to the autobiography of Ice-T, the rapper and actor. And at the end of it, he has all these different sayings that are principles on life and things like that. And actually, one of the things that he says in there is one of the best lines I've ever heard for life in general, but I've even used it like in therapy, is he said that ultimately relationships are not about looking into each other's eyes. They're looking in the same direction. So obviously there does need to be some agreement on what we want in our life, what we want our lives to be about. But if you're just concerned about this hierarchy and dominance and status, and I'm going to acquire this, this, and this, and I have to have this, this, and this, and whoever is the partner in my life, you're not looking for someone, you're looking for some things. And as Eric said, things are always eventually going to change or disappoint you, as opposed to finding a true connection with someone.
Yeah. I always imagine like a lot of these, like I go back to this term MBA-style thinking, that they treat relationships like they're this equation or a business, just like you made the joke about Paulson LLC, that they treat as if they're the one who's the high value, whatever, is the CEO, and their partner, they're looking for an employee in a way. Like, you're going to facilitate these roles. You're going to fill these roles for me because I'm all of these things. And I'm going to be the boss and you're going to be the employee. Well, I mean, most of us live in a fucking at-will state. So what's to say that you get tired of this employee and you toss them aside when, like you said, you're not seeing them as a person, you're seeing them as this, this commodity, this, almost like an employee. And yeah.
And if the commodity is no longer filling those functions, then you fire them. They go, you're fired. So that's like that.
Or if they lose value, or you think they lose value. Yeah, and I see these guys rattle off their list, their equation, and I'm like, well, have you put any thought into what makes a good relationship? Because you're not listing any of those things. Like, are you a good communicator? Are you, like you said, narcissist, or are you, more level-headed? Are you open-minded? Are you compassionate? Like, are you willing to do, 50% of the domestic work if you both work outside the home? Like, there's these there's like these other sides of the equation that make good relationships that none of these guys talk about. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yes, you talk a lot, but are you a good communicator?
Right. And that's any relationship at all, whether it's a partnership or friendship or, any whatever job title, role, whatever you want to throw at it. You have to have trust, communication, and respect.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like what you're describing isn't addressing any of those things. So,
No.
I mean, yeah, like you talk about the checklist, I mean, that's that's not something that's on that checklist. So, to bring back what John said, they're looking for something, not someone. I mean, they've got an idea or a concept, that they're looking to materialize.
Mm-hmm.
And
what should be the checklist? What should be on it? The real checklist.
well, I think a short, cheapened version, would be, does this person make me happy? But I think
Mm-hmm.
even, in a relationship, you've got to go back farther than that. And I don't know. I don't think that people should be your source of happiness. I think happiness is a state of mind. It's a state of being. And when you're happy and you invite someone into your life to share that with, if you're looking for someone to make you happy, then you're already putting pressure on that person that wasn't there before you were there. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So Josh, that's a great question. And the first thing I would say is, I don't know what the exact list is. I've not really thought about it or tried to articulate it until you just asked it. And actually, I think that's an important thing to note, because as we're talking about what tends to help relationships to be successful, is that a lot of times it ends up being attributes that we don't often clearly identify and articulate. It's like things that we take for granted that are floating under the iceberg, and since we don't actually bring them out and make them known and intentional, then it becomes harder to act on them. So I think one thing in a relationship is trying to make these things more conscious, kind of that old phrase of let's make the unconscious conscious. Because one thing that stood out to me from what Eric was saying, and I was jotting on my list, is I talk about things like trust, communication, respect. I think something that we often forget, all of us, is that in relationships and trying to find the ingredients that make those work, is that we have to realize that each one of those are developed attributes. We pretend like all of those things should just be automatic and spontaneous, that we just know how to do them and we do them always. But we don't. Is that communication is something that takes practice, and it takes having some skills, and then it takes working on them. The same thing with, other traits. So, but actually, this is not an exhaustive list, but as you were asking that question, so what would be maybe the true list, is that these are the first things that popped up in my sort of thinking, which is trust, affection, security, and respect. Mm-hmm. So that if I have somebody where I feel a sense of physical and emotional security with them, maybe even a sense of financial security, resource security, if we want to get broader, but if I feel as though I can trust them and rely on them, that I respect them and they respect me, and that we have a true, genuine affection for each other. Because then otherwise, we're going to find, well, are you interested in this? Oh, I am too. Like all the other stuff's there. But I need to be with somebody that I can trust, that I respect, that I feel secure with, and that there's a genuine affection for.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with those things too. One thing you mentioned, I want to piggyback on. You were talking about Ice-T's quote about looking in the same direction, and I saw this graph. It was a study that was done, and it graphed it out. It showed what college students look for, or like the focus of like one's life. And back in like the 30s and 40s, even into the 50s, it was a lot of students, like 70%. Argued or reported that they wanted to develop a philosophy for their life. Like it was a pursuit of theirs to develop this philosophy for themselves, like a good, positive life philosophy, right? That also involves action, but that was the idea. Now it's get a good paying job, make a lot of money, 70%, and that personal philosophy is way down low. And I think that impacts our relationships, our ability to relate to other people, especially a significant other. Like if you don't have that philosophy in yourself of just like what you're saying. You're looking for compassion. You're looking for trust and respect and all these things. Like if you don't have that for yourself, then how do you know to look for it or to give it in a relationship? Like I don't feel like enough of these young people are working on themselves and their own personal philosophy. Um, Rather, so they're almost looking to, like a job to fulfill that for them, or a sense of being with work or purchasing things, some retail therapy, or means of expression through retail and consumption to be who you are, rather than seeking out who you are from good works, good, philosophies, ideologies. And then you match with someone, just like you're saying, and you're both looking in the same direction with the similar ideologies.
But something you just said that I think is important, and of course, like if any other like therapists or psychologists or researchers hear me say this, they'll develop a nervous left twitch in their face because I'm being incredibly reductionist. But just for the sake of illustration, some of the foundational experiences that we develop throughout life early on begins our sense of attachment, our feeling of security and connection to others, especially those that are going to respond to our needs. And so we come to kind of learn that the world can be a secure place. And then through that and through those attachment bonds, we start to learn how to recognize and respond to emotional expressions of others and our own. So we learn that through also recognizing others. Then we start to see others' behaviors and learn how to behave and how to control impulse. And then we start to develop this sense of self, which is really just the sense of the combination of all of these emotions, thoughts, experiences, behaviors over time, and the way that kind of becomes a sense of us. But we have to have a sense of us then in order to know how to have a sense of us with other. And so I think you identified an important point, which is that's so skillful to think about who am I and what am I about, that philosophy issue. Because if I really don't have kind of a good sense of me, I can't share that with someone else because, I have to have a good sense of me before I can have a good sense of us. And I think that's a piece that's missing from a lot of people's relationships now. Now, real quick, when I say I have to have a good sense of me, obviously our sense of who we are is always changing. It's always developing. It's always growing. So it's not like it's fixed in time, but still we get this sense of who we are. And that allows me then to share who I am with someone else. I mean, that's the groundstone of intimacy. And if I don't have that, if I don't have this foundational sense of who I am and what I'm about, I can't share that with the other. And that makes some pretty unstable ground for forming a relationship.
Yeah. So I had a thought, and I'll throw it out to Eric first. So thinking about this list, right? Can you think back of any time you had a previous list and how that's changed? Because you both talked about like things changing over time, right? Your perception of relationships, your needs, your wants, things like that. Like, how has this list changed over time for you? Or has it?
Well, I think that would be a what point or what stage of the game. Like I've been with my wife for 19 years. Like when we first got together, we weren't, we had the same goals, which was, we're young, get our shit together. Like we need to get, reliable vehicles. We need to get, better paying jobs. We need to get, this apartment sucks. Let's find somewhere nicer to live. We were always aiming in the same direction because we were starting from nothing. So, as far as the, high value male, or knowing anyone's value, I think that's definitely a relative term. But, yeah, as far as a checklist, I think, like I said, we've been together 19 years. So at the beginning, if I had been asked this question, I would have had a list of absurdities, like, oh, I want, this or this.
Like big boobs and anal. I don't.
Yeah. And, And she
Who's to say those aren't on the list anymore? I mean,
she definitely has part of that. So
Don't you don't out your wife there.
no,
Right.
he's going to tease us to try to predict which part of that we think that she has.
The Yes.
yeah, as the relationship has matured and as we have matured, I think that my criteria list would have changed, as far as what I'm looking for. But like I said, that's determines
and
what.
so so it sounds like, I mean, you've been together for 19 years. That's so long. Really, it's been. I mean, we've been friends we've known each other for longer than that.
Yeah, we met in 2000, and she and I got together in 2002. So
Damn, I didn't know that. Yeah, so it sounds like one thing we haven't hit is adaptability. It sounds like there's almost like a undercurrent of adaptability with relationships, like being able to flow with your partner when things need to change.
yeah, I think she's definitely shown a lot of adaptability in our relationship over the years of my jackassery. She's put up with quite a bit. I would most people would say that they want a trophy wife, they're a high value male. I'd say, well, she's a participation trophy wife. And and John's laughing because he probably took that the wrong way. No, but what I mean by that
Wait,
is
what
that
did you just say?
I said she's a participation trophy wife.
Okay.
And you're laughing too because you took it the wrong way. What I
Sure
mean
did.
yes, what I mean by that is I've done nothing to earn her.
Okay.
Okay? I have received this trophy just for showing up. Is what I'm getting at. But yeah, the laugh that I got from you guys, I could tell that you were thinking something else.
No, I was thinking that actually she doesn't get a participation trophy. She's going to get one of those Saints medallions for having to kind of deal with your jackassery over time. So I was thinking complimentary towards her. It's like, she deserves like kind of like first ballot Hall of Fame for sticking in the relationship.
Like
Right.
a sainthood? Is that what you said? Like sainthood? Yeah. I don't know. What about you, John? What do you think? Adaptability, like,
Yeah, well, I mean,
is it important?
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, as you say that, because obviously, so my wife and I have been together for 17 years, but we got together a little later in life than some people do. So we both had several relationships, even significant ones prior to that. And so what I'm thinking of, you said, how has it changed over time? When I look at my earliest relationships, you're talking about like high school, kind of into college. I actually think that I was looking for the script. Now, if anything, though, I wasn't looking for the MBA, the MBA script like you're talking about. It wasn't like I'm looking for this high status, but I think I was looking more for kind of satisfying some of those societal scripts. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
I need to find somebody. We're going to be married. We're going to have children. Like you're going to do the stuff. And so I was looking so hard for that I think a lot of my early relationships, I tried to make them too significant and too intense too quick. And that was a bad thing. And so actually is that, so here I am thinking that's what I want, need, that's what I'm looking for. And I was putting such a pressure on it that was not a good thing. So then the opposite thing, then there became this whole sort of almost like an archaeological layer of, then it just became about, sadly, relationships that are satisfying my needs. And so it was more about
Big boobs and anal.
Yes, it was more about things that weren't focused on getting married, having a house, having kids. I mean, the basic goal was who's going to fuck me and who's going to continue to fuck me until I get tired of them. So I don't want them to get tired of me because I want to keep, having somebody satisfy my needs. So it became like this, horrible Roman orgy, and along the way in there were some kind of more significant relationships. But even then, since
I'm sorry. I just imagine like you come. I can totally see you coming in and like a toga with like wreath like ivy around your head and be like, all right, who's going to fillet me first? Like,
okay, listen, stop watching
render under Caesar.
That's right. Stop watching my home videos. All right. So
for all those asking, that's on John's OnlyFans page.
That's right.
His Roman
orgy. Hey, listen, this podcast doesn't pay for itself. So even in some of those early significant relationships is that since the focus was more, it was no longer about the trying to maybe think about the future and the script. And it was more just about me being immature. I mean, that's really what it was. I mean, I'm not defending myself or saying I was like in the right place or the right lane, but those didn't work out. And I ended up having some relationships where I saw some qualities that in myself that I was like, you know what, I don't want to be this way and I got to change. And I saw some in other people where I was like, you know what, that's not something I want in a long-term partner. So just for example, real quick. So something that, we obviously have talked about because Josh and I have been involved in the martial arts a long time. And that's very important to my life. There was a girl that I dated real significantly where I was doing some training in her backyard. And her parents came in from California. It was the first time I had met them. And she was mocking me and making fun of me for the fact that I trained in martial arts and was doing it in the yard to her parents. Like so much so that her dad like came to my defense, and it was really one of those things where she wasn't doing it in a playful way. And it made me realize, I'm like, if you can't appreciate what's important to me, then I don't think we can be together. And that was only one of a list of about 49 other things in that relationship. But so I had several relationships where I kind of told me, it's like, listen, this is not who I want to be, but this is also not who I want to be with. So when my wife and I got together, we were both already 28. She had been married once before and divorced. I had not been married, but in those relationships. But we both kind of came to a place where we were like, listen, okay, this is who I am. This is what I like. This is what I need. This is what I want, and we could recognize that in the other. And then we realized it was important to sort of honor that. I can't think of a better word, but to kind of say, listen, this is going to work. It's important for us to appreciate each other and who each other are and what each other wants. And both of us had to have those early bad relationships where we had people that didn't do that. Like one thing that you said, Josh, one time, and I often quote you, is that, like you said, and this is true, said that Gina and I do separate togetherness better than anybody else. And I really do appreciate it. I think it's accurate. For example, as we both kind of know who we are, what the other needs, what the other wants, is that we're both very comfortable allowing each other to go do what we want to do, because we both kind of need some slightly different things from our friends and our interest. But then we also have the things that we do together. And so like, it was one of those deals where like, I realized the other night I was talking to somebody that if she or anybody I was with, but like if she found it very problematic that I wanted to go do the things I do that kind of nurture me and all that, I'm not sure we could be together, but she kind of looks at it and goes, hey, I know this is you and you need to go do that stuff. And as part of that, I know that she doesn't also have to want to do all that stuff. I mean, we have things we do together, but she's like, I don't feel the pressure for her to always have to come do my shit. It's like, it's one of those things I'm like, hey, she lets me go do it. I appreciate that. I'm not going to force you to come do my shit.
And so we were at that service. I don't want to talk about that real fast. We were at that service and I was eavesdropping. You were talking to our mutual friend, Paul, and he was asking you questions. Your wife has gone to Disney by herself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I was like, what? Like, not that I wouldn't, my partner, like that's nothing. Like if she wanted to go do something, that's fine. I'm the same way. Like, um, me and my partner have only been together for a year, but if she wanted to go on a vacation by herself, she absolutely could. And I think that is a key component. Like your wife went to Disney World by herself because she loves Disney, and it was like a place for her to enjoy and relax and kind of, exactly like you're saying, Disney is her martial arts, right?
Yeah.
Um,
And as part of that, and then I'll be quiet for a second. But no, it is because actually is that I actually can. I'm so happy with that. And here's why: is that yeah, that's her thing, and it's one of those deals where apparently it's not just her. There's this whole culture of people that do like solo trips. I mean, there's a whole like discussion board, and so I mean, this is like a thing. It's not just a her.
Community.
Yeah,
Wow.
but so several years into our relationship, she asked me, she said, I've always read about people doing this and I've always wanted to do it, but I've never felt like comfortable to go do it. But I do now. Would you be okay if I go? And I'm like, well, fuck yeah. Because I mean, what a nice place that she's in a place in her life, which is not completely about me, but it's partially about me, that we have a relationship that she feels comfortable enough to go do that. Um, I mean, that's a wonderful place in a relationship. So yeah, people often kind of think about it strange. You're like, you mean she goes on vacation by herself? I'm like, yeah, and part of it is the reason why I'm okay with it is because
Yeah.
it shows a great trust and respect and confidence in us that she feels comfortable enough to go do that. Where in the past she didn't, even though, there were times where she was single and she was in her 20s, like she had the money to do it, but didn't quite feel comfortable or ready to go. And now, I guess because of just maturity in our relationship, she feels that secure base to go. I think that's a compliment. I think it's wonderful. So I'm like, yes, go do your stuff because I go do my stuff too, like we all know.
I take mine a little step slightly different with it doing things on your own, but because for me, like my philosophy was, I was, this is not a surprise to exes. I was a bad cheater, like in my 20s, bad. And so I developed this non-monogamous philosophy, especially being a sex researcher, it's kind of occupational hazard. So with that, like required me to be able to do a very similar thing, like gonna have this open relationship because I need it, like being able to communicate that with a partner and also have that philosophy in my mind of like, look, this is who I am. If you're gonna be with me, like you kind of got to be on the same page or in that way. So my partner now, she's very open-minded. She's also open to, and we've kind of developed this relationship because we both need that freedom. For me, I also like space. um we have a two-bedroom place where this is my office and we have a bedroom, and sometimes she goes and visits her family in South Carolina and I just kind of do my own thing. And I think that's important for relationships, just like you're saying, like whatever space that looks like. I think being able to provide that for your partner without insecurity, without, and being able to trust and respect that what that need is, I think is important.
And part of, yeah, you're right, because but part of it is, and this is not always, we treat as an automatic, but it's not. Part of it's figuring that out for you, for them, and for the two of you together, and then making sure you're with somebody that's going to be okay with that. If I was with somebody that, and this is is not trying to judge them because we all have different energies. If I was
Mhm.
with somebody that was not comfortable with me kind of having my own space and going doing my own stuff, I don't think that would work well.
Yeah.
So it's also kind of realizing, who am I, who are they, and can we come together with that?
All right, Eric, do you need space from your wife?
We like John and Gina, we do a lot of activities separately. My wife's into hiking and camping a lot. Like I enjoy it too, but like that's something that she it's very passionate about. Like she'll go on camping trips and hiking trips. Like she goes hiking twice a week. Um, Yep,
Twice a week?
Yeah,
Jesus,
she'll pack up and go camping for 3 or 4 day weekend, and I usually stay home and work and hang out with the dog, and that's
yeah.
she gets her time, and then we do a lot of things separately, but we also do a lot of things together. But some of the, like, I would go out and play pool. That's kind of my martial arts. I enjoy playing pool, and that's kind of a comfort zone for me, and it's something that she's not super interested in. But
Yeah. And I think that comes with, maybe that's an age thing, where as you get older, you develop these things that you like. And I feel like the trope of the traditional family is like the husband escapes the family or the wife by going out in the garage or going and doing stuff in the house. Like, and I feel like it's modeled after this escapism as opposed to mutual respect of space and time. And
it might be a type of escapism, but also, taking that sort of time pulls you out of whatever situation you're doing and allows you time to think about what you're being pulled out of. I do a lot of woodworking, so when I'm, working on projects and stuff, my hands are busy, but also my mind is busy, and I can focus more of my mind whenever, you know, I'm looking at something that I'm doing. Like when I'm working or, whatever going out throughout my day, my mind's all over the place, but when I'm doing something right in front of me, I can kind of clear my head and, have better focus. So yeah, I mean, that could be a form of escapism, but it's also kind of a meditative thing for me. But
but I think focusing on all these characteristics and attributes is really important, because now going back to, I really like this, the MBA business model, like Josh was talking about earlier, thinking about relationships as an LLC, and things like that, because again, using that analogy, lots
I
of
mean, it is business time.
that's right. It is. It's
I mean,
not. Listen, this relationship is not show friends. It's show business.
it's show business.
So it's one of those deals where whenever you look at, guess what happens? A lot of businesses, they go bankrupt. They have they split off the partners, and so actually one of the reasons why I think this is important to kind of look at. I was thinking about my family, and the median number of divorces that most people in my family have had on both sides is 2. And so I had a relative that said, I've already given all my shit away twice. I'm not going to do it a third time. And he did it a third time. So, it's one of those deals where I think that when you're treating it as like an objectifying thing, like the business, I have to have A, B, and C, and I want this in a partner, and you don't have that mutual respect and appreciation and those patterns of communication and understandings, I think that that's it's not the only, but it's one of the reasons why relationships break up, because you had this idea, this fantasy in your mind. And what happened is that the reality doesn't match the fantasy. And so, like we were talking about earlier about the adaptability of relationships, is that in order for it to work, is that you can't have the fantasy of the relationship. You have to work with the reality of what's actually happening. And of course, that changed over time, and we can do things that affect and change it. But I'm not living in some type of fantasy expectation. I'm living with, this is what I'm trying to do and who I'm trying to be with my partner.
Yeah. I think for a lot of young men, they assume, and I see this a lot in pop culture, and like I said, a lot of TikToks, this idea of having money to pay the bills and support. It's a lot of this notion of support. And I think they get wrapped up in what support means. And for people who are this MBA-style thinking, support is financial only, financial. And they don't understand the deeper connection. You have someone, the deeper connection that's required and that's needed. And I think even some young women don't understand that either. because they're going through the same trials and tribulations that men are, trying to figure out who they are and philosophies, you hope anyway. Because I think it requires both people to have those journeys to come together, just like you and your wife. You came together later, both with these frameworks, these ideas of how this was going to go. And I think for a lot of young people, the MBA style thinking is not just men, it's also women, unfortunately.
Oh yeah, no, it is, because because we're going to have this relationship and it's going to happen by this time, and then we're going to have our first child by this time, and we're going to have the house, and it's almost like they're planning the wedding, the the relationship, the first child, like all this stuff is like on this timeline. And again, let's not be too critical. That's just natural, I think, for us as young people to do. So I'm not trying to be too critical of that, but that creates the problem, because then you have this fantasy in your mind about what's going to happen and in what order and by when. And then we now are at a point in our lives, the three of us, where we know that rarely does shit work out that way. So you really kind of get more to a place where you're like, listen, I'm willing to give up some of the fantasy, and I want to find somebody I can just be comfortable with, and I don't have to put up with the bullshit.
There's a great video floating out there. It changed my life. It actually probably caused one of my worst breakups, but it was this great video that I saw in like 2005 when, the internet was not very, as like it is today. Maybe even earlier than that. It's called I Guess You'll Do by Mike Polk. And it's this animated thing where, and it's got a woman narrating, but it's from this woman's perspective of like, she finds this guy, he's a couple years older. They're both, educated, middle-class people. Let's get this started. Like, we'll go on a couple dates, roll around on me for a while, whatever gets this started. We'll take pictures of a Memorial Day barbecue and put it in our cubicles. That was nice. Now it's time to move in together. And it's just this like, all right, so now I have something to talk about. It's like, we're going to get married. I will plan it for an entire year. And it's like, it's the only thing I will talk about. And then whenever I'm, after the wedding, I will reflect upon the wedding. And then whenever I get tired of that, and my friends get tired of listening to it, I think we're going to get have a baby. It's just these like staggered steps. And the end is like, what is it? It's like, you'll die early of like heart complications. Your funeral will be relatively well attended, and we will all go back to the house for cold cuts, for sandwiches. And I was just like, oh, that just like, it just dug into me. I'm like, oh God, this. And I just like, my life just started tunnel visioning in front of me. And I'm like, I got to get out of here.
Yeah. We should try to link that video up when we post this.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find it and link it to the bottom.
Because also another one, there's a comic named Sinbad who had a new special several years ago, and I watched it. And I guess he had remarried one of his wives. Like now they're both older, like in their 50s or so. And actually watching him talk about that is also one of the things that kind of reaffirmed what I'm hoping for in a relationship, kind of one of those moments. Because he's talking about like what you're looking for when you're younger. He goes, now that I'm older, he goes, I want to be with somebody who recognizes the signs of a stroke. He's like, I need to have somebody that's going to be able to know to call 911, that's not going to be like, why are you doing that thing with your face? It's like, no, call 911. He goes, because eventually you realize, like, listen, you can't hear, she can't see, together you can do it. It's like, so it's like, it's a wonderful reminder of how you try to complement each other, and hopefully, again, that goes back to having a true relationship as opposed to just dealing with those checklists. Like you said, is that, if you're truly in a relationship with somebody, that's friendships too, from both of you and from other people. The sign of a genuine friendship is the way that they help you to kind of learn about yourself and grow, and that's the same thing of a relationship, is that, it's like, it's one of those things where I appreciate certain things that, my wife does, that she's taught me. And that gets down to that sense of, being more real with each other, as opposed to just acting out roles like you're doing a high school play.
I don't know. Would you say that for you guys, two married guys, would you say that you are friends with your wife?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, if your wife wasn't your wife, would you be friends with her?
Yeah, she's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, same thing for me. Now, I have kind of an unconventional view on this. And in fact, I was mentioning this to a friend of mine, Ron, the other day. We're talking about it. Now, here's the deal. Yes, am I friends with my wife? Yes. But like sometimes you hear people say, well, is your wife your best friend? And so my comment is no. I say she's my wife, and that's a very special role to me. It's a different kind of love and relationship. It brings with it wonderful different commitments I celebrate. My best friend or my best friends are guys. It's like it's one of those deals where it's not that my wife and I aren't friends, but that whole deal of, oh my gosh, they're my best friend. No, my best friends are guys. You're my wife. Like that doesn't come up with her, but like, sometimes I think also is that we sometimes have that expectation that, oh, well, this needs to be like my only relationship that I have in my life. No, if you're in a relationship, that needs to be a strong and primary relationship, but it also can be helpful to have other relationships that also hold you up. So I found that sometimes people's relationships, including their marriages, don't go as well when they get too disconnected from their other tribe. When it's just that relationship, I think it's healthy to actually have some connections outside of that relationship.
Eric, you the same way?
Yeah, I'm with John. We are friends, but I do have best friends, and they're guys, and we've got shared interests, and she's got best friends that are girls, and that's typically who goes camping with her. They'll go off and probably vent about me and my jackassery, and she just walked through the room a while ago and goes, "Trophy wife, huh?" I was like, "Did you listen to the whole thing?" I was like, "It was a compliment."
Yeah, I agree. But I see a lot the same thing. I'm not going to say it's in the same vein as the MBA-style thinking, but I see a lot of men report that, like, I'm not friends with my wife. I'm like, what the fuck are you not friends with your wife? Like, how could you not be at least friends with your? I understand the best friend thing because you're right. My best friends are dudes too. You guys have been friends since. I mean, my one friend Tom, we've been friends since third grade, which like we still talk a lot. Which I think you both know actually.
Yeah.
We're from a small area. Everybody knows everybody. But even still, like, I've known Eric for what, 3 years now, something like that. Known John since we grew up in the same tiny town. I've known you since like used to hang out with your brother in elementary school.
Yeah.
Like I've known you since then. So like you have these acquaintances or friendships that last a long time. And you pick your wife, you think you'd pick someone with the same values, the same ideology, same concepts of self that they're going to be your friend at least. But so many like men reports like, I'm not friends with my wife. It's like, how could you? No wonder you're unhappy. No wonder the divorce rate's 51%. Like you picked the wrong person if you're not going to be friends with them.
I think that's a good point because, again, going back to my point again, I think that there is something special about like maybe the way we think about or conceptualize or come to relate to a certain title like a marriage, or the role of husband, or things like that. And again, I don't think that all those are always bad. I think they can be good. But if you're just playing out the role and it's like, I'm just this, I'm just provider, like you were talking about earlier, I'm just provider. No, it's not my friend, it's my wife. It's like, yeah, I'm with Eric. My wife's cool to hang out with. I mean, it's one of those deals where like, and if you don't find the person to be your friend and cool to hang out with, then it's going to get really tiresome trying to live together and navigate all this other bullshit. Because if I don't have that friendship, a lot of this other stuff is going to completely overwhelm my commitments to the other.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and to come back to your original thought about, I keep wanting to call it a list of demands, with your high value male or whatever it is that you're making a list of things you're looking for in a partner. I mean, are they breaking those down to wants and needs? And I just feel like there's a lot from an MBA style, like way of thinking, I'm like, there's a lot missing from this equation. Like this is not a simple formula when you're picking a partner. It's got to be more than just a checklist. And I think, like, like I was kind of talking about earlier, about being with someone because you want to be. I'd rather find someone that I want to be with, not somebody that I need. Like when you're coming up with a list, you're like, I need this in a person. Like I I need to be complete as a person, and then I can spend more quality time with you. I don't need anything from my partner. Ideally, I'm not looking for completion. I want to find a sense of completion in myself, and then we've got two complete people that can come together and be that.
Eric, that's a great point. And it goes back to that we were talking about earlier, that part of what's needed as a good foundation of relationship is some type of a stability and sense of self, because I have to sort of know who I am and be at least mildly comfortable with me so that I can share the other. Because I'm with you, is that, and so who knows, maybe this is a good thing, maybe it's a bad thing, but no, it's like one of those things where, so let's say sadly, if I was no longer in my relationship, there's still going to be a me. I mean, and it's like I don't necessarily have to have certain things, but I really value having those. Like you said, they complete me. They are important, but they don't define me. There is a me beyond the us. Now the us is very important, so I'm not minimizing it, but there's a me beyond the us.
Well, and something else we can link in the description if you want. You had talked about putting in Sinbad and that video that was life changing for you, Josh. There's a guy. His name's Tim Minchin.
Yeah.
He's got a song called "If I Didn't Have You,"
I love
and
this.
and this this song is describing, if I didn't have you, someone else would do. And he goes through this list of things about his partner, and how it's like, this is I'd be all right without you. Like this is cool. I'm glad you're here, but if I didn't have you, someone else would do.
And while that seems so almost nihilist, almost and minimizing, I feel like it actually has an undercurrent of like positivity, because you're right. You don't need these persons. You want this person. It is a conscious active choice to be with this person, and that's always something that struck me when I was younger. And even not so long ago, out in Vegas, I had this buddy who he had broken up with this girl, and he started dating this other girl that he had seen years ago. And we were hanging out one day, and I'm like, "So how's that going?" And he goes, "Well, I guess I'm in a relationship." I'm like, "You guess you're in a relationship?" Like, I see this a lot for men. They start dating women, or they start dating a woman. Um, and I use this in the hetero context, right? This may apply to gay men or whatever too. You start dating someone, or even you start fucking them, whatever, and all of a sudden, like, you give up the reins of being in a relationship, or not the reins. You're just like, well, I guess we've been seeing each other. I guess, like, it's not a conscious active choice or decision, and that always struck me as weird. It's like, this big thing. Like, do you want to be with this person? Like, you should make that decision conscientiously. Because if you're just like, well, I guess I'm in a relationship, we'll see how it pans out. It's like, guess what? It's not. If you go in it with that ideology, like, I'm panning for gold. Let's see if I get any in this stream. I'm here. Why not? It always struck me as like this weird, like, whatever, I suppose.
I think that sort of mentality comes from just being surprised that somebody wants to be with us. It's you're still in a state of shock. I envision life as walking down the road, like you're walking home. That's one of my favorite quotes from Ram Dass. He says, "We're all walking each other home." So I always think of as my life as a journey of walking home, and the people that you consciously have in your life are people that are walking home with you. So when you think in terms of a partner, that sort of indifference of, oh, I guess we're seeing each other, it's like I envision somebody like just walking up next to me and being like, "Oh, do you actually want to walk with me like this?" Like, all right, I guess we're walking together, like it's just kind of a element of surprise type thing, like, yeah, I'm not sure this is actually happening. I don't want to jinx it.
And Eric, you make a good point. And something that makes you think of is in this one contemporary psychotherapy that I appreciate reading about and then try to learn skills consistent with. They put a heavy emphasis on values-based behavior and helping people to identify their values, actually distinguishing goals from values. It's different. And maybe they don't use this wording, but as Josh was talking, as you were talking, it becomes, like you said, kind of more about realizing what you are going towards as opposed to what you're running away from. Because you don't want to do things where you're just trying to avoid or run away. You actually want to be moving towards what's important to you. What are your values? Like, what are the shores towards which you're swimming? Where's the going home, the path you're walking? Because if you're just trying to avoid or get away, that's usually not a good place from which to make choices, including relationships. It needs to be more about, what do I want? Like, what do I value? And then how do I move towards that?
Well, the term any port in the storm comes to mind whenever you're talking about that, John. A lot of relationships can tend to be rebound relationships from previous relationships, and it can be turned into something like an any port in the storm type thing, where it's like, I just need to get away from that, or I need to get, most of the time if people move or have any kind of movement, it's either towards something or from something, if we're moving with intention. But
I guess that's a great saying. Like, I hope nobody ever like writes sort of a biography about my life, because that would be the name of the chapter that talks about my college years.
Any port in a storm?
Yeah.
Oh, don't get me started.
Hey,
college years.
At least you were in a position where you were just vigorously collecting data. I mean, you're a sex researcher, you're connected with the Kinsey Institute. You needed to do some good data collection and analysis.
Well, here's a thought too. You were talking about my college years. I'm still in college.
Oh, well, that's true. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, he is like Van Wilder, just a professional student,
Oh yeah, no, actually. So on a side note, real fast, I was given a deadline of February to defend my dissertation. So because my chair is leaving the country for the rest of the semester, so I need to get it done before then. So I will hopefully be Dr. Josh in the spring.
Josh just faced the academic version of shit or get off the pot. Like they didn't put it in those words, but kind of where we're from, kind of here in Southern Indiana, is that he faced the doctoral dissertation version of shit or get off the pot.
Yeah. My advisor said she wanted me to graduate before she retires. So I'll see. It's like, ouch. All right. So final thoughts. Just what if you were to go back? This is my thought. So if you were to go back to yourself when you were 18, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self? Or we'll just use that example of relationship advice. Like, what would you say to yourself? Or what would you say to an 18-year-old today of like, really, and they took it to heart. Like, what would you tell them?
That's actually pretty tough.
I watched Secondhand Lions the other day, and it always resonated with me. He has this like speech he gives what every young man needs to hear to become a man or something like that. And I always thought about, it's like, what would I tell myself, my 18-year-old self, as far as relationship goes?
Yeah, and who knows, maybe with a little more time, I would think of something different, but just off of you asking, I think the first things that come to me are, if I was to go back and to talk to my sort of like younger, high school self, I would say all of this is tougher than it seems. So just don't pressure yourself. Just don't rush it, and really come to figure out you, because that's going to be key to moving forward, including in relationships. I think it would be just sort of like spend more time sort of like figuring out you. And don't figure out you, and don't put so much pressure on yourself to be in a relationship.
I think instead of, giving myself that advice, obviously I can't do that. I find myself trying to impart that sort of stuff into my children. That's the opportunity that I've been given, since I can't go back in time and correct the dumbass stuff that I've done. I've gotten wiser with age, and I can impart that wisdom to my children. Since I obviously couldn't go back and do that, I can try to make sure that they've got the tools they need to be better and not make the same mistakes I have. I try to.
Yeah, what would you tell them?
Well, I tell my son a lot of things, and like he talks. He's almost 13, and he talks and talks and talks and talks. And I try to explain to him that you can't take in information when you're spewing something out. So I try to encourage him to listen more than he speaks. He'll be playing his video games and have his headset on, and he's got his mic and he's talking to his friends, and he talks nonstop. And I tapped him on the shoulder one day and I said, buddy, there is no possible way that your friends have been able to say a single word. Like, you have not stopped talking. And I try to encourage him to think about what he says, and ask himself, is what I'm about to say, is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Use that as a guide to let things slip out of your word hole. Like when you're just, because he just talks to be talking, and I know that he wants that attention, but that's I think the important lesson that I would give to anybody is shut the fuck up. Stop talking and listen. That's you. There's just a lot more that I think people could take in when they listen. Because I had a conversation with a friend the other day about how people generally hear what they think you mean rather than what you actually said. So like when somebody's talking to you, your brain is, filtering this information and kind of coming up with a summary of, okay, so this is what this person's saying. Nope, even shut that down and listen to what they're saying. Like, to the point where you could repeat back to them what they said. That's what I'm trying to shoot for myself, and that's what I try to encourage him. Sometimes I'll say something and I'll say, repeat what I just said, and it'll be something off the wall because he wasn't listening. And he'll, sometimes it'll be close. It'll be a generalization. It'll be, you said something about blah, 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 and I'm like, well, that was close. But again, people hear what they think you mean, not what you actually say. So I don't know. I think being a better listener and talking less, I think would be an important lesson. I say this as I'm babbling. I've been talking a whole lot here. But yeah, that's what I would give as advice to any young person out there is, shut the hell up and listen. Actually take in your environment.
Yeah. Compassion would be a big one. I think when I was younger, I was very kind of headstrong, little foolhardy, and stuff like that. But more so, I think I'd go with John too on develop yourself first. Be a good person first. Like, figure out who you are, who you're going to be, these philosophies you want in life. Like, what do you want? Who do you want to be? And then find someone later that might match that. Worry about it right now. And also, it's like a canoe, and imagine a man riding at the top of the canoe. Like, that's where it is. That would be the divide. advice. You guys aren't getting this, are you? It's like a canoe, the guy, the man in the canoe. No.
Something about a man in the boat.
Yeah, it's a man in the boat, man in the canoe. Yeah, it's the man at the top of the canoe. That's
I think
where it
this
is.
is what you mean. I'm hearing what I think you mean.
Yeah. It's not down here. It's up at the top of the canoe. That's what I would tell my 18-year-old self. Yeah, just he likes a lot of attention. The guy at the top of the. I'm sorry, but yeah, the things we talk about. No, this has been great. And you're right, John. As John mentioned earlier before we started, for those who stuck out for the whole hour, if you have anything you want us to address, any questions or like topics you think we should tackle, or you want to hear us rant about, send us an email.
Topics to rant about, to kick around, to make fun of, to ponder and explore, just anything. Because we really appreciate your time and effort and listen to us, and hope you find it enjoyable, entertaining, and beneficial.
Yeah, and you can send those. You can comment at the bottom of this on YouTube, or you can send us an email at flyoverthinkers@gmail.com. Still working on the Twitter and the things of that nature, but we're going to stick to comments and our Gmail account for now, as we kind of grow. And if you like this video, hit subscribe, leave another comment, other than suggestions is fine. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining me, guys. I know we'll try to make this a little more, I'm not going out of town, and the hurricane passed through finally. So maybe we can pick this up and do a couple more episodes rather quickly.
Sounds like a good plan.
Yeah,
awesome.
Like I was saying, this has kind of become my fight club. It's like the thing that I look forward to. So it's we need to get more regular here.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for joining me, guys. We'll see you all next time. And for everyone who paid attention or watching the video, appreciate that too. So, all right, see you next time.